Hey everyone, and a huge welcome to the university students and viewers joining us today. Welcome to this explainer, where we take complex, real-world research and transform it into clear, actionable takeaways. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating topic, Nepal's globally renowned community-based forest management. We are talking about a country that literally handed over a massive chunk of its national forest directly to local villagers. Now, if you study environmental governance at all, you've probably heard of this program. It gets hailed as a massive, sweeping success. But today, we're going to enthusiastically unpack the paradox behind that success story. Because as you'll see, saving a forest doesn't always automatically mean saving the people who rely on it. Okay, let's look at the roadmap for today. We're taking a two-halves approach. We'll start with a quick look at Nepal's community forestry model, then we'll cover 5 key challenges on the ground, followed by 5 key opportunities for the future, and finally, we'll wrap up with the future of Nepal's forests as a whole.
So, what is community-based forest management, or CBFM? Well, it's a fundamental shift in power. Instead of forests being managed entirely top-down by some distant federal authority, the management rights for specific patches of forest are handed straight over to local people, specifically to groups known as Community Forest User Groups, or CFUGs. This transfer of power from the state right down to local user groups is the entire foundation for everything we're going to cover today. It's an incredibly bold move, but how does it actually play out in reality?
Let's break down the 5 core challenges. Challenge number 1 is something researchers call elite capture. Now, in theory, the whole community manages the forest, but in practice, these forest communities are frequently dominated by the wealthier, higher caste, or more highly educated members of the village. This means that historically marginalized groups, like Dalits, women, and the poorest households, are frequently just entirely excluded from the decision-making process. And the glaring inequity here is that the very people who depend on the forest the absolute most for their literal day-to-day survival often have the least say, and they end up receiving a much smaller share of the benefits.
Challenge 2 is a really intense clash between protecting nature and basic human survival. To protect the forest, these local communities often implement highly conservative, strict harvesting rules. Now, while that is fantastic for the tree canopy, it directly clashes with the daily reality of the community. Poor households desperately need fuel wood for cooking, fodder for their livestock, and timber for shelter. And here's the kicker. Sometimes these strict conservation rules actually deepen local hardship, pushing desperate households toward illegal extraction simply because they have no other way to survive. Our third challenge comes down to weak institutional and technical capacity. Handing over a forest to a community is one thing, right? But managing an entire, complex ecosystem requires highly specific skills. Many of these local user groups completely lack the technical know-how to draw up proper operational plans. They often struggle with non-transparent financial management, or they just lack the scientific forestry knowledge, known as silvicultural practices, to actually nurture the ecosystem. This lack of capability usually leads to one of 2 outcomes. Either the forest resources are totally underused, or they're harvested in a damaging, unsustainable way.
Challenge number 4 highlights a constant underlying struggle for power. There is serious state-community tension over control and revenue. Think about it. Even though the management rights were handed over, the government periodically attempts to reassert control. This might look like slapping new revenue-sharing rules on timber royalties or suddenly applying much stricter regulatory oversight. This top-down interference creates intense friction with the very spirit of community ownership. Ultimately, it ends up discouraging communities from making long-term, meaningful investments in improving their local forests because they don't know if the rules are going to change tomorrow. And the final challenge is limited economic returns. Honestly, this is perhaps the greatest tragic irony of the whole model. These local communities are sitting on an absolute wealth of resources, specifically non-timber forest products, or NTFPs, like highly valuable medicinal herbs. Yet, they struggle to actually commercialize them. Poor market access, limited processing facilities, and the kind of endless bureaucratic hurdles that require a literal forest's worth of paperwork mean that massive income generation potential is left completely untapped. The forest thrives, sure, but the community's economy does not.
Here is a rapid overview of 5 interconnected pathways that offer immense hope. We're going to move from ecological recovery directly into enterprise growth, capitalizing on climate finance, leveraging federal decentralization, and finally achieving true social inclusion. When you combine these, they have the power to transform community-based forest management into a system that is both ecologically sustainable and economically rewarding.
Let's break them down. First up, we absolutely must acknowledge the ecological triumph here. Because despite all that government's friction we just discussed, Nepal's model has unequivocally succeeded in its primary ecological goal. Over the past few decades, we have seen a measurable, documented increase in forest cover, we've seen vastly improved biodiversity health across these areas, and the successful restoration of crucial local watersheds. The physical forests are recovering and thriving. That is a massive foundational victory to build on.
Opportunity 2 lies in livelihood and enterprise development, and the avenues for lucrative growth here are highly diverse. Under those non-timber forest products we talked about, there is enormous potential for herbal products and processing. In agriculture, we see opportunities for agroforestry and beekeeping. And under conservation, there's the highly lucrative potential of forest-based ecotourism. Global market demand for herbal and natural forest products just continues to surge. This offers these communities a direct path to serious income generation, if they can properly connect to those markets.
Now, opportunity 3 is an absolute game changer. I'm talking about climate finance and carbon payments, specifically through a mechanism called Red D+. Nepal has been a major pioneer in piloting Red D+ and carbon trade schemes through its community forests. What this means in plain terms is that local community forest user groups can actually earn direct financial payments from the global community. Why? For the carbon their trees are actively pulling out of the atmosphere. It financially rewards locals simply for protecting their trees and providing conservation services to the planet. Opportunity 4 stems from a massive structural political shift. Nepal recently transitioned to a federal structure. This decentralized governance is a huge opportunity because it allows the community forestry model to integrate directly with local government planning. So rather than fighting with top-down federal authorities hundreds of miles away, local communities can work directly with their local governments. This direct integration is a powerful remedy to the weak institutional capacity and that state-community tension we discussed earlier. It ultimately leads to better coordination, greater accountability, and much smarter resource allocation.
And our fifth and perhaps most crucial opportunity is social inclusion and empowerment. Remember that elite capture problem from earlier? Well, the solution lies in mandated inclusion quotas. By requiring specific representation for women and historically marginalized groups right there within the user group committees, the whole system transforms. When these policies are actually enforced, the Forest Committee ceases to be a boys' club for the wealthy. Instead, it becomes a powerful, equitable platform for genuine grassroots leadership and empowerment.
So, what does this all mean? The core takeaway from the research is this: simply planting and saving trees isn't enough on its own. Sustainable outcomes require us to fix human governance. The path forward for Nepal's community forestry depends entirely on resolving those deep equity gaps, making sure everyone has a voice at the table, and closing the governance gaps. But simultaneously, these communities must be empowered to leverage modern climate finance, like REDD+, alongside local enterprise opportunities. The ecological success is already there. Now the economic rewards absolutely must be distributed fairly. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider as we wrap up this explainer. As millions of dollars in global carbon markets and climate finance prepare to flow directly into these local communities, will an influx of climate finance actually close the local equity gap, empowering the poorest to rely on the forest? Or if elite capture remains unchecked, will it simply widen the gap, enriching those who are already in power? It's a critical question for the future of global conservation. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this research today, and keep asking the tough questions.